All right. Looks like we're live. See some people joining. Hey guys, welcome to Business Basics. Get your 2025 on track. Can see quite a few people joining. I think we got 120 people that registered today. Not sure if everybody's going to join, but we'll be sharing a recording of this after we're done with today's webinar as well. Thanks everyone for joining. Um, We're just gonna give this a few moments, like a minute or so, for everybody to get settled in, set up their Zoom, audio, and whatever else you need. In the meantime, you can just let us know in the chat where you guys are tuning in from. Always a nice way to start things. Um, is it mostly people from the US and Canada, which is where I am, and Tom is in the US, or is it people from all over the place? Seattle, Greece, Denver, USA, Montreal. Nice. Thanks for joining, guys. Let us know where you're tuning in from. As I said, we'll give this a moment. I'm tuning in from Toronto, Canada today, so hey everyone. Oh, Paul's joining from Dublin. Hey Paul,
Hey, Paul.
nice to see you. Okay, good stuff. All right, let us know where you're joining in from, and then we'll get started in a moment. We're going to be talking about some pretty exciting things today, about some ways to make your 2025 even more successful. I'm assuming everybody has been very successful so far. I'm hoping everybody has been very successful. Who knows? Um, but we'll explore some ways to maybe improve upon that even more. Okay, Richmond, Virginia, we got
Great turnout.
Dallas. Yeah, doing pretty well. Netherlands, Summertime, thanks for joining. Good evening to you. All right, I think we have a good base of people already. Let's jump out right in. Yeah, hey everyone. Welcome again to Business Basics. Get your 2025 on track. My name is Tim Grohmann, as you can see on the screen. I'm the operations manager for Rentman North America here in Toronto, and yeah, I'll be your host for the next 30 to 40 minutes. We'll see how it goes. Tim and Tom usually have a lot of things to talk about. So we'll see how much time we take. I'm originally from Germany, but I've been based in Toronto, Canada for the last 8 years. Also just became a Canadian citizen last week. And I'm leading Rentman's growth in North America since 2017. So we are in the fifth month of the year now. I'm sure there's many things that you wanted to do at the start of the year that you maybe haven't done yet. Some things that you've tried, some things that worked well, some things that maybe didn't work well. And yeah, we know that it's not always easy to put your New Year's resolutions, excuse me, into practice. Um, so what we want to do today is, if you're a little bit behind on making your 2025 a success, we just wanted to take a step back, look at some things that could maybe turn out to be helpful. And yeah, we decided to focus on three topics today that our guest, and I'll let him introduce himself in a moment, Tom Stimson, has spoken on in the past, and we actually have quite some experience with as well. And what we'll be focusing on are breaking down organizational silos. What are they? How do they pop up? How do we solve them? We're going to be talking about smart outsourcing and building a good freelancer base. And then we're also going to be talking about how you can maybe work on your quotes a little bit to make sure they get accepted a little bit more frequently. So yeah, without further ado, I'll let our expert, our guest today, introduce himself. Tom, for the people that do not know you yet, who are you?
Hey, thanks, Tim. Hey, I'm Tom Stimson. My company is the Stimson Group. I have been in the professional AV industry for over 40 years. Um, I touched my first slide projector in 1982. So grew up doing theater, been in live events, and worked for a professional high-end corporate event company through some very formative 15 years. And then in 2006, I became an independent management consultant, and I work exclusively with companies that are in the professional live event space. So many of us identify as rental companies, but we are people who get shows done for our clients, and those are the folks that I coach and counsel to. So I create a lot of blog posts, I write books, I hold workshops, and I have a lot of very loyal clients, and I've worked with hundreds of companies over the past 20 years.
Got it. Thanks so much for this, Tom. We actually like did join one of Tom's Jumpstarts events. Just was it 2 weeks ago now? 3 weeks
Two
ago?
weeks ago, yeah.
2 weeks ago. Spent some time together in Columbus, Ohio. Lots of interesting things to explore. Always nice to join those sessions. We were a sponsor for one of those sessions, if you're wondering. Um, yeah, really cool to get together with people, obviously to talk about Rentman a little bit, but especially to learn from everybody else that joins. And I think we have a lot of learning to do, and that it's great to join
Yeah.
those people and
It's
figure
a
things out.
great way to keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on in the industry. There's 110 attendees there. We visited shops. We
Yeah,
went on a shop crawl and visited
super
other
nice.
companies and heard about their stuff. A lot of good conversations, a lot of good market intelligence at an event like that.
Yeah, really appreciate the opportunity to also look at some warehouses. We're on the software side, so sometimes it helps to get into those shops and see what's actually happening because sometimes we just imagine the way that things are supposed to be working, and then you go in and look at it in person, and it's a little bit different maybe than you imagine.
Hmm.
Anyways, so for the attendees today, thanks so much. We're looking at 34 people right now. We would really love for you guys to, proactively participate today. You can probably see that we have a chat window for you to post into. So throughout the session, we'll try to answer as many questions as possible. Let us know what you guys are interested in. We're going to be talking about some preset topics, but if you have questions, if there's something you're struggling with, if there's something that you want to ask Tom or me or other people in the chat, just post into it, interact with us. We'll see if we have the time to engage with you guys, but it's definitely a cool opportunity to talk to both Ratman and Tom. Okay, Tom, let's get started. Let's start with one of the topics that you've talked about a lot and that we in some way or form try to solve, and that's breaking down silos. And our focus
Mm.
here is building a collaborative and communication-based workflow. Um, Tom, what are silos in the context of event production companies? Tell us a little bit more about how to define those.
Um, Silos, or as we often call them, kingdoms, are, how do we say this? They're often little personality cults. You find silos revolve around individuals. Sometimes they are heroes. They're very good at what they do, but they also don't always
Mm,
let other people do what they can do well. But silos are really more about process. So if you have a
got it.
siloed process, you have to have a way to move information and tasks through the silos in order to get the work done.
Right.
If you have silos, you probably have a project management system because project managers are how we get information from the sales silo into the operations silo, into the
Mm,
inventory silo, into
mm,
the job prep silo, right? And we have to move through all those silos, and project managers are our means of moving through there. So if you have project managers, chances are you have a siloed system. If you have a siloed system, you're going to need project managers in order to get a job
mm.
properly produced.
Yeah.
Now, silos are not good, right?
They're not
Silos,
departments. They're not
no,
departments.
they're not departments. Silos are limiting. And the problem with silos is that it limits your capacity. So when we find silos, we're going to find a limitation on capacity. We're going to find companies that always feel like they're too busy. They're too busy to break down silos. They're too
Mm,
busy to improve processes. They're too busy to hire another project manager so they can do more work.
yeah. Got it. Okay. So that's what silos are. And you've talked about that. I think we have the people side of things here. That like you can have those individual kingdoms, but is it the individual people that are really the problem? Like that they create their own kingdoms, or is it also about like what's management's role in the creation of silos? I think is what I'm asking.
Well, very often, and we're dealing with small companies here. We're not giant corporations with thousands of employees. Um, we're dealing with people who are actually, probably involved in delivering the product on a day-to-day basis, even though they are the owner or an executive in the company.
Yeah.
So chances are they are part of a silo,
Right.
right? So it's very difficult to break down silos when you're in one, when you own one, and when that's something that you manage. So part of my job as a business consultant is helping people understand why their business works the way that it does.
Mm.
And it may work just fine for them if that's what they wanted to do. But if they aspire to something, if they aspire to growth, they want less stress, they want to make more money, they want it to be easier. Very often, we're going to take a look at where the silos are manifesting because that's the thing that's holding them back.
Right.
So management's job is to identify goals, say, where do we want to go? Where do we want to be? Then we have to figure out how to get there. And silos are very often an obstacle
Mm.
because it is people who have gotten comfortable with something. They're very good at something and they've built
Yeah.
a process around themselves, but it is limiting. There's only so much capacity in that individual or that group of individuals in that silo.
Yeah.
So it works against the greater goal, which is more flexibility, more profitability, expansion, whatever it might be.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're basically centralizing too much work in one individual, and sometimes when you're maybe not that busy, it works well, but then it does get busy and uh yeah, they get overwhelmed. And I think we have a first question coming in here from Paul. He says, in our business, we struggle to define the difference between a production manager and a project manager.
Mhm.
Most AV rental guys see themselves as production managers, where really they should be a project manager. Feedback, please.
So thanks, Paul. And you always ask good questions. These are just words, right? What do you want them to be? So a production manager to me is a higher level of project manager.
Mm,
Okay, a project manager is somebody who moves work through processes. Project management is a process. So
okay.
there is no one definition of a project manager in our world. Every company defines that person differently, and every company,
Yeah.
the job is a little bit different.
Just the
Production
title in the
manager,
end as well. Yeah.
yeah, it's a title and a role, but it's going to vary from company to company. If you get new internet service provider installed in your apartment, there's a project manager. Every
Yeah.
business has project managers. Production managers, on the other hand, are an industry-specific term. They come from the event world, and they are somebody who is technically knowledgeable about how to put something together and create the definition of outcomes and help see that the project managers or the silos or the folks involved in the job get the work done. And in our traditional model of AV rental guys,
Mm,
as Paul says, is the production manager is often a customer facing person and might actually replace a salesperson. So in
okay.
many companies, a production manager is the de facto salesperson.
Mm.
Just please, God, don't call them a salesperson because they get very upset.
Got it. Okay. Paul, let us know what you think about this. If this is helping, if you have any other questions. And again, just like everybody else, if you have any questions similar to Paul's or something else that you're struggling with, just post them in the chat. As you can see right now, Tom has some good insights on these topics. He's done this long enough, I think, to have a good answer to most of your questions. Um, Tom, what I wanted to follow up with, what are maybe some of the early warning signs that leaders can look out for, or anybody in a company to see silos forming? Any examples that you've come across that stood out to you?
The Every conversation that begins with, "Hey, Tom, I need your help," we're always too busy.
Got it.
So we're always too busy. Well, does that mean that you're doing tons of revenue? No, 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 no. Our revenue is flat, but we're always too busy,
Hmm.
right? Do you have busy months and slow months? Yeah, we have slow months, but we're always too busy. So being too busy is the number one sign that there is an underlying problem in the organization. Silos are going to be part of that
Yeah,
because silos always work at capacity. If you give people a task and you don't give them a timeline, it's going to take all day.
exactly.
That's what silos are. That's what silos do. They take exactly the amount of time that's available to them to do
Hmm.
the task. And if there's a disagreement about how long it should take, you now have conflict in the silo. The silo wants to take 8 hours to do it, and the business needs them to take 1 hour. something's going to go wrong.
Yeah.
So if we're always too busy and we're too busy to make improvements, if we're too busy to discuss change, um, that's the thing that we're going to have to work on. So feeling like you're too busy is an indication that, you've got a silo problem, that you have a process problem, and you need to pull back and look at your business a little bit differently, perhaps find a more scalable solution because silos are not scalable,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
If you base everything around a person, maybe even a group of people, even if they might be small, like again, you can get busy, you can grow, but it's not going to scale with like, if you're looking to like get more business in, if
I'll,
the bottleneck is
I'll,
them.
I'll give you the perfect example. Many years ago, a client came to me and said, "Hey, we've got five great project managers. We love them all. One of them does twice as much business as the other four.
Mm,
And we need to figure out how to get the other four to handle more work."
yeah,
Okay. And so I looked at it and I followed their processes. And at the end of the day, each of the five project managers managed exactly four projects a year, four major projects a year.
mm,
And one person just happened to have two very, very large shows, which is why his numbers were bigger. So I said, the problem is not, your project managers. They're in your system with all the work that they have to do
yeah,
from drawings and pricing and requoting and designs and everything. They did the entire job. They could only do four jobs a year.
right.
So the problem was, give them bigger jobs, they'll do more revenue. But the problem is your project management process. Project managers are doing too much of the work, which means they can only work on one job at a time, which means they can only do a limited number of jobs a year,
Which means you also need more project managers in the first
which means
place.
you need more project managers to grow, which means
Yeah,
you are not scalable.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like adding more and more overhead, the more people you hire.
Right,
And in the end, like you have more people, more information gets lost,
right,
more individuals in the end to take care of. So,
right.
and I
So
think
to
like
just,
you're a huge proponent of staying lean, right? So,
well, you want to stay lean in the things that you can be lean on.
mm,
Okay. So project managers are inherently not lean because you have project managers working through the entire process. If we take the project management process and just look at the things that anyone could do,
mm,
that you could centralize, the project manager's job becomes much smaller, which means they can handle more work.
got it.
Right. So what we have to do is, shrink what a project manager does. So they are working on the things that only they should be doing. What is their highest and best use in the process?
Yeah. And I think we're getting a little bit into like some solutions here already with like,
Mm.
shrink down their responsibility, centralize the things with them that do make sense. Um, what are like other actionable steps to get there to de-silo yourself in the end? That could be, I'm not asking for a full solution or maybe how to spot them at the first steps to get there.
The exercise I take my new clients through is we look at their organization and what all the people in their organization do. And you have people in your organization that are responsible for tasks of selling,
Mm,
marketing, business development, quoting, writing proposals, closing deals, account management. Those are all selling tasks.
yeah,
You have people who are involved in planning tasks, figuring out where the gear is going to come from, who do we need to hire, procurement, scheduling, logistics, scrubbing the order, prepping the order, putting it on the truck.
yeah.
Okay, those are all the planning tasks. Then we have some administration tasks because, well, we have to keep the internet up and the toilets have to
The
work.
basics. Yeah, yeah,
Right. We got to, we have to have a roof over our heads. Everything else is execution. So execution is the work that we're getting ready to go do, which is generally for most of us on this audience is to go out and
yeah.
do a show for our clients or do the client's show for them. So if I look at an organization and there are the same people who are involved in selling, who are involved in planning, are also involved in execution, that's the problem,
Right.
right?
Too many
So
tasks, one person.
to
No way
to
that's going
yeah,
to work out.
yeah, there's no way it's going to work out because if they are busy in execution, they're not helping in selling, and selling suffers. If they're busy in selling, they're not helping in planning, and planning suffers. Selling and planning go on all the time.
Yeah,
Execution is highly specialized. So we have to be so good at selling and planning that we can hire execution experts, which can often be outsourced.
And then we're getting into the freelance topic, which we're actually going to talk about like in a
Mhm.
moment. But what you're saying then is like the first step really for organizations would be to sit down, look at that org chart that they maybe have, identify what everybody is doing, is supposed to be
Mhm.
doing, is currently doing, and then maybe going from there and identifying like what those bottlenecks potentially are.
Yeah, I mean, what's the problem you're trying to solve? We can't get a quote out because the project manager is on show site, and I
Yeah.
need the project manager to write a quote. Well, there's a classic problem.
Hmm.
So if the salespeople can't write their own quotes, and there's nothing wrong with that, then they need a
Hmm.
dedicated resource to help them put together quotes.
Yeah.
That can't be somebody who's on show site 75% of the year, right? So
Right. Yeah.
we're not taking care of selling. So it's what are the bottlenecks? What are the things that keep you from taking on one more job?
Hmm.
Those are the things that we need to solve. And very often it's the wrong people in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Got it. Okay. So, yeah, guys, I think like for the people attending, like let us know what you think about this. Do you see this happening in your own organization? Have you identified some of those bottlenecks? What are you doing about them? Let us know what you're thinking could be going wrong in your own organizations, and maybe
Mm,
we can have a chat about that. But it would be cool to hear like who else is running into these kind of
mm,
bottlenecks. Um, we've discussed streamlining internal operations a little bit, kind of identifying those bottlenecks. Trying to get that done. Let's focus, let's shift focus and talk a little bit about external partners and maybe how we can even apply the same mindset here in some way or form. So I want to kind of move on to our next topic of this webinar today, which we call strategic outsourcing, which um, to use the words for this. I want to talk about outsourcing to reduce overhead, staying lean, kind of maintaining agility, and I think freelancers are a key aspect of this
mm,
across the industry.
mm.
Um, so they're critical, to the success of pretty much any live event. Um, but I do have the feeling, and I think I learned this a lot from like going to your Jumpstart events, Tom. Um, they still treat those relationships as very transactional. Not saying that like the attendees at your
Mm.
events do this, um, but they don't really focus, or companies don't really focus on building real partnerships, and also don't really try to, as you say, build a deeper freelancer bench. Um, how should event production companies and AV companies treat their freelancers? Like what kind of like model do you recommend here?
Well, um,
Bit of a broad question, I know.
well, no, no, no. I mean, first of all, let's just be good human beings and treat them well, right?
Yeah.
You're putting them in front of your customer. Anybody that you're putting in front of your customer is extremely important to you. So take care of them. Um, give them the support they need. Well, I was a freelancer for many years, and one of the most shocking things to me, coming from the theater world where everybody helps everyone else, and getting into the AV world, and I would, you know, I'd be on a show site, I'd call the office and say, "Hey, this video projector is not working correctly. Can you send another video projector out?" And I would get a response like, "Well, no, you're just a freelancer." Yeah, I'm a freelancer standing in front of your client on your show site working for you, right? So I don't think we see that mindset or that prejudice as often anymore, but we still see
Mm,
it. Um, we put freelancers on there and we protect ourselves by putting employees on there to make sure that the freelancers aren't the last line of defense.
mm.
When in fact, many freelancers are actually better at what your staff people do.
Yeah.
So understanding that, and I think all of this comes from people who have a lot of bad experience with freelancers because they recruit poorly
Right.
and they try somebody out and it doesn't work, but they use them again because they haven't found anybody else and they're too busy to find somebody else. Or they find three people they like and they just keep using them over and over again until they're not any good anymore.
Just
Um,
overusing them in general.
just
Yeah. And
overusing
not
them.
making
And,
the effort of like deepening that bench, like not making the effort to
right.
attracting more freelancers that are, out there
Yeah, they're just looking
post-pandemic,
at them
probably harder.
as an employee, but not an employee that's full time.
Yeah.
So I don't need more employees. So why would I need more freelancers? I have these three people. They're usually available. We don't usually need more people. Well, guess what? As soon as you have a job where you do need more people, nobody's going to work for you
Yeah.
because you always call the same three people and everybody knows that, right? So why would I help you out? You're never going to call me again.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right. So
exactly.
you've got to spread the work around. You've got to have relationships with a lot of people. And I tell you what, a good relationship with the freelance community is probably the best marketing you can have for exactly the reasons that everybody tells me they don't like freelancers, which is, oh, they work for my competitor. Yes, they do work for your competitor. They work for everybody's competitor. And which freelancer do you want working for your competitor? The one that says, yeah, I work for those guys. They treat us like crap. I don't want to work with them again. Or the
Yeah.
one who's standing there watching a show implode going, this never happens on Tim's jobs.
Exactly. Like building that reference list, right? And I mean, like we work in software, and this is like maybe a little bit far-fetched, but the way that we, can continue to grow our business like in a very scalable way is making sure that our users talk positively about us. Um, making sure that people are happy with the system, and then word spreads about it. And I think
Mhm.
in the end, it comes down to the same thing here. Treating people well, making sure that you work with a wide variety of people. And if you treat them well, then word's going to spread. Then people will want to work with you, I'm assuming, right?
Yes. Yeah. You have to
Yeah.
be if you're the company that freelancers want to work for, you have won. You have
Yeah.
won the game. You've got the trophy. If you're
Gotcha.
the company that freelancers work for begrudgingly, okay, you're not going to get the best
Yeah, I
freelancers.
got to take this job, I
I got
guess.
to take that.
But
Oh,
like, but
I got to work for these.
you don't want that. You don't want to have that. I got to take
Yeah.
this job, I guess.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you want to avoid. We're talking about freelancers and why freelancers and not more full-timers. Like if it's difficult to build a bench, like why not hire more people? Not saying that finding the right people is like
Well,
easier in the first place, but why freelancers?
I mean, they don't have to be freelancers. They can be permalancers. They can be, you know, um, they can be employees that are just on demand.
Mm,
These are semantics. Okay. How they get paid, their tax status, their employment status doesn't matter.
mm,
What matters is I'm only paying them when I need them to work.
right.
So full-time people I have to pay all the time. I have to have benefits. I realize, this is going to vary for our audience. This is going to vary across the EU. This varies across the US and Canada, employment rights and things like that.
Mm,
But we don't want to commit to employees if I don't have full-time work for employees. And if the reason we have employees is because it's too difficult to outsource, then we're not working on the thing that's most critical to our business.
mm.
So I do hear this all the time. People say, oh, well, there's no freelancers in our market. We've tried to find freelancers. We've tried, it just won't work. We always have to bring people in. It's too expensive, yada, yada, yada. I'm going, try again.
Yeah,
Try again. There are adult human beings in your marketplace. Audiovisual is not rocket science. There are trainable people out there. You just have to, it has to be important enough for you to do it.
right. And the interesting thing I found when we were at Jumpstart 2 weeks ago was like I think the question was thrown into the room during one of the breakouts. So what does building a reliable network look for you guys, and then what ideas do people have to do that? And I think you can get really creative with these things as well, to like finding them, attracting them, maintaining them. I think I don't know who it was brought up that. Um, they organize a taco Tuesday
Hmm.
um, every now and then. Basically, just for freelancers, people come in, they have the opportunity to network, which is what you do,
Yeah.
Tom. Like your Jumpstart events are primarily meant for networking and getting people
Hmm.
together, getting them talking. And I think here people do the same thing. Taco Tuesday doesn't need to be tacos. You can also do something else.
Right.
Have like invite people, get them to connect, sponsor that. And then I think the other thing that I came across that people said, which I found was interesting, was letting people actually come into the shop and test some of the new gear that they might have.
Right.
Maybe have somebody on the manufacturer side sponsor a session,
Hmm.
right? Like have them come in, have them play around with some new gear. For somebody that hasn't worked with gear, I talk to a lot of people that love their equipment. This is kind of like the
Yeah.
unifying
Yeah.
thing in the industry, which
Right.
also creates problems, and we're going to talk about that in a moment, actually. But letting them play around with the gear in the warehouse, and then obviously like pushing those referrals, 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 treating them well,
Hmm.
making sure that people talk positively about you, whatever that might take.
Right. Yeah, you've got to listen to freelancers and let them help you improve your business. Right? I mean, there's a valuable lot of information out there, and outsiders always have a good perspective.
Yeah.
You get used to doing things internally and you don't really notice what you're doing anymore. And people come in and say, hey, it would work a lot better if we tried it this way. So you got to treat them as a resource. I love the Taco Tuesday concept, having regular open houses for freelancers and suppliers to come mingle with each other, share ideas, sit around, you know, eat some pizza and talk, play with the gear. You can bring your buddy who, you'd like to recommend as a freelancer.
Yeah.
You get to meet people, you build community. You just want to be where the good people are,
Yeah.
right? So hosting events will help you become one of the better people, and you'll meet more people, you'll try more folks out.
Exactly. And community building is like it's what you do. It's what we do as well with our community events. We actually have a community event coming up at Infocom where we're going to be just inviting some people, have people talk. And in our case, this is not about freelancers, but it's about bringing people together. And I think this is the best way you can grow your brand. That's what you do, Tom. That's what we
Yeah.
do. That's what every company to a certain extent can do as well in the industry. In this case,
Yeah.
with a focus
Yeah.
on bringing
Martin makes a
freelancers.
great point here about training freelancers. Why wouldn't you train freelancers?
Mm,
What's the worst? The worst that could happen is they go work for something else. The best that could happen is they stay and work for you. Why not do it? You're going to
yeah.
train. My first company was a staffing company, and I realized I needed to grow a pool of freelancers because I found the six AB freelancers in all of my marketplace,
Yeah.
but I needed 30. So I held training classes. So anybody that I could meet, friends of friends, college graduates who had a useless theater degree like me. And I just went into a hotel ballroom. The AV companies there gave me all the equipment, and I just trained them for a day.
Mm,
It's not that hard. And if you train 10 people and you keep two, that's a really good return.
that's
But if,
a
but if,
great conversion rate.
right. But if you're good at recruiting and you're good at referrals and people are bringing you trusted friends, okay, then your retention rate goes up to 50 or even 60%.
Mm, mm. Yeah. And
Because
I think like
they're not gonna bring you a bad person.
yeah, yeah. Especially if if they respect you, I don't think they're gonna like, bring anyone over that they don't respect themselves. So I think you can really leverage that effect.
Right. And for anybody out there advising freelancers, giving them career advice, I always tell freelancers, if you ever refer somebody to me, they better be better than you are.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? Don't refer somebody who's not as good as you are because you're, oh, that way I won't lose any work. No. Bring me somebody who's better than you,
Mm.
okay? And I will give you all the work that you can handle.
Yeah, yeah. Paul chiming in here. We've had onboarded two new entry-level technicians on 1 year contract. We will get a return on investment on neck down work up to small show ups for first year and then let them loose into the freelance pool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that works. And I think about what Martine was saying up there as well. There's a saying that we use if you train your people and then they leave, but what if they stay? And
Yeah.
I think, I think most reasonable people will hopefully pay you back in some way as well. Like, you train them,
You,
they'll probably
you,
give something back in return.
you put good vibes out in the universe, you're going to get good vibes back.
All right, let's,
You put mistrust out into the universe, you're going to get mistrust back. So be the company that freelancers trust and want to work with and respect,
yeah,
and be who they aspire to serve.
got it. I think those are good words to finish up this topic. Thank you, Tom. We've talked about internal teams when we talked about siloing, we talked about external teams. Um, let's talk about something else external. Let's talk about presenting our services to clients. You hear this a lot. We hear this a lot. We have quoting tools. Um, and I think let's talk a little bit about outcome-based quoting. Um, and I know this is one of your favorite topics, Tom, and I think you actually spoke to our CEO, Roy, about this August, September last year a
Hmm.
little bit already, but let's make this the last point of today. I think we're hitting 35
Hmm.
minutes right now. Um, when it comes to quoting, just sending out that gear list just isn't enough anymore. I think we can pretty much agree on that. I think what clients of event production companies want or what they should want are solutions and not necessarily specs. And I think like one thing that you've always brought up that I like to also tell my team here when it comes to like why not just like the list of gear is like uh, it's the plumber example.
Mhm.
Can you explain the plumber example?
Well, so when you need a plumber, and let's face it, if you need a plumber, you really need a plumber, okay? You're going to hire a plumber who's going to come out and fix whatever problem that you have. They're going to charge you a pretty substantial rate per hour to do that work,
Mm,
and they're going to bring a truck full of tools. You're not renting the tools from them. You're paying to get your leak fixed or your toilet repaired or whatever it is. Get your shower working again. Okay. You're not renting a truck full of tools. You can't go out there and start pulling
fixing
tools
it
off their truck
yourself.
and using it somewhere else
Yeah.
around the house. You're paying to get something done. And that's how we need to look at our audiovisual equipment. If you own sound systems or lighting packages, video rigs, these are tools to get things done. We don't
Mm,
rent our tools to our customers. We provide our customers what those tools can do. So they're not hiring us for the rental equipment, they're hiring us for what the rental equipment does. And it doesn't do it, oddly enough, without people.
mm.
So people are the only thing that really matter. A truck full of great plumbing tools without a great plumber is
Useless.
useless,
Yeah.
right? So you can have the great tools, best tools in the world, but if you don't have the people that can use them properly, then they're useless. So what's our value? Our value is always in people. Is our value is in our ability to put the right people onto a project, and those people are going to pay attention to the details, understand the client's needs, be able to focus on the outcome, and use the tools correctly to do it. So if we
Gotcha.
have to quote the tools that we're going to need, then walking in blind. If a plumber just shows up and says, "Well, I'm guessing I only need these 8 tools because that's all they're paying me
Mm.
for," and he had to leave the right tools back at the shop, what was the point of bringing them in? So you want to show up with what it's going to take to give your client a good job. Rental line items keep you from doing that.
Mm. Mm. And it's much less about value in this case. You know, you're giving them a list, and I think there's a, you know, for rent, like there are the rental companies that rent out the gear, and I think that's all fine. But I think like, you know, like at least like today, I think we're mostly talking about the companies that actually get the shows done,
Hmm.
and are not just like renting. And I think it's really like you know, communicating the value. Really maybe focusing more on project scoping rather than
Hmm.
just like creating the list of gear. It's nice to create that on the back end, like your team needs it, but then what you want to show to the client is less about, you know, the individual items. Even if you love your
Right.
gear,
Right.
they
Well,
don't
so
care.
let's talk about where the gear comes into play because
Mm.
and as you were already seeing in the comments here, how do you
Yeah.
put a quote together if you don't add up the gear? Well, fine, add up the gear. You need an understanding of what the job is worth to you to do. And if your tools for that are adding up the stuff that you're going to take and what its value is in rental terms, and that's how you calculate, then fine. You can build the quote in Rentman to get an idea of what the value of the project is, but that doesn't mean that's how we have to communicate it to our customer.
Yeah.
I can say, hey, I talked to the customer and we need, sound for 300 people and we need 2 screens of video. We've got to put 4 computers up there. We need downstage monitors. We got a light. We want to video record, but we don't have a lot of space. So we're going to put a RoboCam in the back of the room. Great. I just described the scope of work. All the outcomes are not well described there. They are implied. At the end of the day, everybody can see, everybody can hear. We're going to record, we're going to stream, and the presenters are going to be comfortable. The client's going to be happy. There's my scope of work.
And put that on the documents,
And that's
right? Like
that's the
it
quote.
can be as
Here,
easy as that.
here it is, $35,000. That's
No.
that's how you present it to the customer. Now, how did I get there? Well, I probably, because not all of us are clever that way, I have to go into the software and I add up the gear and I count how many speakers and I figure out how many cables. Oh, please don't do all that. But I know that's what people do,
Yeah.
right? Now that tells them their quoting software told them, their rental software told them what this job should cost. Okay. But that's not how we should communicate it to the customer.
Right. There's one way of getting the information in the first place, and then there's the other way of communicating that. And I think then it's
Right.
much more about, communicating the value. And in some way, it's about software sales as well. Like good software sales, in my opinion, is not about telling people we have this feature, we have that feature, we have that feature. It's all
Hmm.
about, cool, we have those features, but in the end, what are those things going to do to you? I'm not going to
Hmm.
tell you an equipment module, we have that. It's amazing. No, people are not going to understand that. It's
Right.
our terminology. It's much more about, with this, you can achieve X, Y, Z, and then it's much more
Hmm.
about value creation. It's about solving problems. It's about offering solutions, right? And I think
Right.
similar to how we do this, like my background is in sales. I sold Rentman, maybe to some people joining today. I didn't try to communicate this by listing the features. It was much more about, scope of working, talking about the value, talking about the solutions, talking about
Hmm.
solving problems that the clients come to you with. Like, I
Hmm.
need this and that done.
Yes. Yeah. And then you can get deeper into the project and get particular about what you're actually going to send based on what's available, based
Yeah,
what turns out to be really suitable, which you didn't know 6 months ago when you started quoting the job,
yeah,
right? So you can make those decisions and make those adjustments as you get closer to the project. It doesn't really change the value.
yeah,
Now, people go, oh, the screen size changed. That changes everything. No, the screen size changing just changed the screen size. It
yeah,
doesn't actually change the value of the job,
no,
right?
no.
Well, the smaller screen's less expensive. So what? Why? Why does that matter?
Outcome is the same in the end.
Outcome is the same,
No,
right? I'm putting an image on a screen for a certain number of people that has a value. What's the fit and finish of it? That's what customers are paying for.
no, no. And I think in the end, like by, having more value-based quoting, by having more outcome-based quoting, you prevent getting a lot of these questions in the first place, maybe. Anyways, I mean, there might still be that occasional line item
Right.
shopper that you're gonna have to deal with, but
Yes. There's always going to be line item shoppers. I call them control buyers. Control buyers think they're the expert. You're not the expert. And so they want you to show them what your thinking is so that they can challenge it.
yeah,
Because in the end, they're going to be right. But most of our buyers today, compared to 20 years ago when I was selling, are not really control buyers. They are more confidence buyers. They want you to be the expert, particularly the younger generation, the millennials. They don't want to understand how all this stuff works. That's your job, right?
yeah,
So just I want to trust you. I want to listen to your recommendations and just tell me this will work and it'll meet my needs and I'm happy.
yeah, yeah. Sean is asking, so is there a fundamental shift in pricing or quoting here? Like how to think about how to price or quote a show?
Sure. Yeah, it is a fundamental shift because, you know, using the rental model and adding the parts and pieces up to see what it's a crutch. The fact of the matter is, everybody will put the same quote together differently. So
Mm,
we're never actually figuring out what the intrinsic value of it is. We always complain about the salesperson who leaves out important pieces of the job when they're putting an order
yeah,
together. And how do we fix that? Because we're going to have to send it, but they didn't put it in the quote. It's like, well, they didn't put it in the quote because they didn't understand why it was needed. Why would your customer understand why it's needed if you're a
yeah,
salesperson? Why isn't it just included in the things that they already put in? So now we're looking at, if I'm not worried about rental items and I don't want to have to go through that detail, now I'm quoting systems. I
mm,
have packages which have, scope of work capabilities.
yeah.
Okay. So
Describe the package, describe what it can do, maybe if you want to go that far. And I think this
right.
maybe also answers some of the questions in here, like how Rentman maybe does this as well. You can group things together. You can create those packages, keep those packages less item specific and make them more about solution specific. Those are capabilities. I think there's more work that we can do here for sure, but you have the ability to add more scope of works in terms of descriptions on your documents
Well,
as well, using document text. So um, keep it less line itemy, packages, groups, document
right.
texts, put them on your quotes, maybe some pictures if you want to. You can do all of that with our document editor. So there's ways of doing that as well.
Yeah.
Can I make these proposals in Rentman? Yeah, I think you can, Sean. I think if you're having trouble with it, we can talk to you about it. But I think there's ways of doing it. But I think it's mostly
Well,
about just keeping it to the minimum in terms of gear info.
well, your product tree is going to help you here because you can have products in your product tree that you put your quote together that aren't tied to inventory items, but
Mm,
then you can later decide what inventory items to supply. So quoting doesn't have to be the same as fulfillment. We've got to win the job, and then we can worry about what we're actually going to allocate to it. You know, scope of work, though, to Jacob's question here is that, yeah, our scope of work says, hey, we're going to provide you, two large screens. We're going to light a stage that's 18 feet wide and 12 feet deep. We're going to, do a two camera switch to record with a live stream.
yeah,
You know, that's as transparent as customers. Is that what they ask for? Does that meet their needs? We provide a complete presenter support package, which includes, right, downstage monitors, wireless clickers, whatever, a speaker foldback, whatever it might be. And if you make those things standard, this is not a shopping list. This is just how we treat your presenters,
yeah.
right? So these things are included. And, you can specify how many wireless microphones. I'd like to say I'm going to provide up to 8 wireless microphones, and I'm going to send 12 because I'm not an idiot,
Just to be sure.
right? If you need 8, you should have sent 12.
No, no. Okay. Thanks for the insights there, Jacob. And yeah, virtual combinations in Rentman, great idea to do that as well. That's exactly what we built them for.
Mhm.
I think you can really use them for that. Um, Tom, last question about those. With the people that you work with or that maybe come to your events, have you seen like what have you heard from them moving from a gear list to a more value-based, outcome-based approach? I'm thinking of like, win
Mhm.
rates or these kinds of things like what's the outcome of the people that you work with or talk to?
I I think that's a great question. I think the answer is empowerment, is
Mm,
that once you start working, presenting what you're going to do for your customers, you're doing this for them,
mm,
right? Once you start presenting it in these terms rather than a transactional methodology of line items and quotes and hours, you, there's a lot of yeses built into that quote and that
mm,
proposal. And when the client says, well, does this include? You say, yes, it includes. It gives you an opportunity to explain that you're there to support them. You're not there to limit them.
mm, mm.
And so as a seller, you're empowered because I'm anticipating your needs. I'm sending stuff you didn't ask for because I'm the expert and I know you're going to need it. But I
Yeah,
don't want to have to explain to you why you need it and then specifically charge you for it. You
yeah.
know, I'm
You
just
build
going to
that
send it.
trust.
Yeah, I'm going to send it because it's the right thing to do, but it's also built into how I do things. So that empowerment also plays when the customer pushes back on budget or changes or scope creep. They say, hey, well, we really like to do this. And then you can clearly say, well, that's not included in the scope. Here's what we could do. Here's what we can
Yeah,
add on and what it looks like. And it's like, well, I'm renting all this gear from you. Can't you just add that? Well, no, you're not running any gear from me.
it's
You're
not
engaging
rental.
me for outcomes, and now you're adding another outcome, and it's a
Yeah,
great outcome. We love your outcome, but here's what it's going to cost to do it.
yeah,
And being empowering you to have better conversations where you don't feel like you're getting pushed around by a transactional buyer. And also, who wants a transactional buyer? Not all of us do. Okay, some of us would like them to go away or
yeah.
become better buyers.
And become
So
more frequent buyers through that
And
as
I and
well.
I will tell you, 40 years in the business, we created transactional buyers. Okay. Our rental-based industry trained buyers to be transactional, and it's now our turn to untrain them
Yeah,
and get away from this whole rental think model of we're adding up line items and that's the value of the job. The
yeah,
value of the
yeah.
job is what the client's willing to pay for the outcome.
Yeah, yeah. We might be called Rentman, but don't worry, we very much subscribe to Tom's like approach here. A little bit difficult with that name, but we're doing our
Well,
best to
but
move a little bit
hey,
away from that.
we are rent people, so
Yeah.
right. This is our heritage. We can embrace that, but that doesn't mean that's what the way our customers need to think.
Yeah, yeah. We don't have to keep subscribing to that philosophy, I think. I think we can move on and leave that behind. And
Mhm.
last comment from Paul here. I think direct customers that trust your business easily adapt away from lists. Agencies and government is a little bit more challenging. Fair enough.
It is, however, they also don't know what your line items are either. So you could be very selective in saying, here is a line that includes a whole bunch of things, everything it takes. You know, if you're not smarter than procurement, government procurement, you don't belong in business.
Fair enough. Okay. Ouch. Yeah. There you go, Paul.
You heard that one,
Some,
Paul.
something to think about. Okay. Yeah, I think we'll probably do another session, maybe even Rentman specific about like about those quotes. I'll talk with the team as well, so we can take a Rentman look at this, and maybe it's a good thing to maybe have another specific webinar about this at some point as well. For now, Tom, I first of all want to say thank you. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for letting us sponsor your events as well. Always a pleasure to have you on and to work with you. And if we have to summarize this real quick, what are your main takeaways from this, based on what we just talked about?
I think that the big takeaway here is if if you don't get away from the rental think, you'll never see how much rental think is controlling your business.
Hmm,
Okay, so if we define our business as rental line items and that we are a rental company doing rental transactions, we lose our show credibility, we lose our service credibility. But until you try and make that separation, you won't really understand all the benefits of being outside of it. We're a
hmm,
service industry. We have an opportunity to behave more like a service industry. Services have a lot more value than transactions. And we do some very valuable things that no one else on the planet can do. And
100%.
where are our customers going to go if not for us? So we owe it to them and we owe it to ourselves.
Great. Thanks for those closing words, Tom. Really appreciate that.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for being a sponsor of Jumpstart. You guys made all the difference in the world. Much, much appreciated.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much, Tom. Tom, if people want to learn more about you, where can they find you? Where can they learn more?
You can find me at my website, trstimson.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Amazon, buy my book, but do reach out. If we've not chatted before, I'd love to meet you. Reach out. Let's have a conversation. I want to hear your story.
Sounds good. All right. Thanks for this, Tom.
All right.
We might have you back maybe later this year. So if you guys enjoyed
Okay.
this, make sure you follow us on the socials. You'll or follow Tom on the socials. He's also on LinkedIn, posts very actively there. I watch that stuff a lot. Helps me a lot. So yeah, follow us on the socials. And then if you have any other topics that you would like us to discuss, just shoot us an email or send us some ideas on Facebook or Instagram or wherever, whatever channel you use. And then we can talk about that with Tom, without him. We'll see. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining. Great
Thank
to have
you.
you around.
Sure.
Have a good one. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.